And now, everyone, it is time. It is time that we now get into the grand finale. And for this grand finale, boy, did I save the biggest animation and the biggest entertainment news for last. Because like I said, this isn't just the biggest animation news of the year. This isn't just the biggest entertainment news of the year. This is one of the biggest entertainment news of the entire decade. And if you thought the Disney Fox major was a big deal, well, strap yourselves in, folks, because I would argue this could even be even bigger. So without further ado, folks, let's finally go and discuss about the Netflix deal, or specifically Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery. So as you may know, for several weeks, there have been a massive battle going on between Netflix, Paramount, and Comcast in order to go and ultimately acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. Since several months ago, Warner Brothers revealed that they decided to put themselves up on sale and see who would ultimately be a major buyer. And after long consideration and hearing prices from the three sides, Warner Brothers ultimately decided that they wanted to go with Netflix, and to go specifically into the details of what the deal has in store, or what the deal is. Well, I will go and read you here directly from my source on Netflix, in which it is stated here: today, Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery announced that they have entered into a definitive agreement under which Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, including its film and television studio, HBO Max, and HBO. The cash and stock transaction is valued at $27.75 per WBD share, subject to a collar as detailed below, with a total enterprise value of approximately $82.7 billion, equity value of $72 billion. The transaction is expected to close after the previous announced separation of WBD's global network division, Discovery Global, into a publicly traded company, which is now expected to be completed in the third quarter of 2026. So pretty much to go and say that, and this is something very much to go and emphasize, is that keep in mind that the deal is not officially made just yet. What happened is that Warner Brothers has selected their buyer. That's pretty much it. They still have a long way to go before they can go and ultimately acquire Warner Brothers in the first place. In fact, considering that there was the announcement that they want to wait until the third quarter so that Warner Brothers can fully separate themselves from their own TV networks, don't expect this to go and officially happen until much later, like maybe at the end of 2026 or maybe somewhere in 2027, when the official transaction can happen and that Netflix will officially own Warner Brothers. But going back into this story right over here, we also have a couple of quotes that I'd like to go and read you here. And the first one is coming from the co-CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, in which he states here, "Our mission has always been to entertain the world. By combining Warner Brothers' incredible library of shows and movies, from timeless classics like Casablanca and Citizen Kane, to modern favorites like Harry Potter and Friends, with our culture-defining titles like Stranger Things, K-pop Demon Hunters, and Squid Game, we'll be able to do that even better. Together, we can give audiences more of what they love and help define the next century of storytelling." We also got a quote here from the president and CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, in which he says here, "Today's announcement combines two of the greatest storytelling companies in the world to bring to even more people the entertainment they love to watch the most. For more than a century, Warner Brothers has thrilled audiences, captured the world's attention, and shaped our culture. By coming together with Netflix, we will ensure people everywhere will continue to enjoy the world's most resonant stories for generations to come. Now, what's interesting, however, is that there is a bit of an extra chapter that happened after the entire announcement of the acquisition. Because let's just say that not everybody is happy with this announcement and that this deal is actually happening. I mean, of course, most people are really not happy, but I will get to that later. But specifically, what I mean is that there is one sore loser in all this, and that is David Ellison of Paramount, in which after it was revealed that Warner Brothers chose Netflix, he went onto a massive rant and even wrote a letter where he said that the sale is considered unfair because he wanted to have Warner Brothers and he doesn't want Netflix to have Warner Brothers. So yeah, you can imagine that the dude is just throwing a massive tantrum going, it's not fair. And even in my source here on the Hollywood Reporter, it even states right over here, like just to read you part of what the letter is said, and apparently CNBC actually fully published it. It actually states, several U.S. media outlets have reported on the enthusiasm by WBD management for a transaction with Netflix, and on statement by management that a transaction between WBD and Netflix would be a slam dunk, while also referring to Paramount's bid in a negative light. Additional reporting since the submission of revised bids on December 1st has indicated that WBD's board has really warmed to a transaction with Netflix due to the chemistry between WBD management and Netflix management. So basically, the dude is being salty, and now he's going on to a rant saying, mainstream media ruined my deal. Warner Brothers decided to be woke by going with Netflix. You know, like going into all that kind of bullcrap. But very interestingly enough, today, there is also a very significant update in which Paramount has announced that they want to do a much bigger deal. They actually did a hostile offer where now they want to do an even bigger bid than Netflix, where they said that they will offer $108 billion so that Paramount can go and buy Warner Brothers Discovery. And keep in mind that with Paramount, they want much more than just what Netflix is going to get, because Paramount actually wants both the entire studio and its library of content, as well as all the TV networks. They just want everything. And I'll even say that you could tell that the Ellisons are being absolutely desperate with this final offer right over here, because funny enough, it is actually revealed that with this hostile offer, they actually went to go and get the help of some very shady people. Do you remember when there was a time when Paramount was called out that their offer to Warner Brothers Discovery includes money that actually belongs to Saudi Arabia, and they completely denied it? Well, it looks like in this case here, they decided that the mask is off, and they said, yeah, you know what? We're going to need all the help from the Middle East and from Jared Kushner. No joke. It actually says right over here, now going back to my source on Deadline, where it states, Paramount's last and best offer for Warner Brothers Discovery, one that it took hostile today, includes funding from the Public Investment Fund, which belongs to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Limaldi Holding Company PJSC, which belongs to Abu Dhabi, Qatar Investment Authority, which belongs, of course, to Qatar, and Affinity Partners, the investment fund of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, all of which they decided to step in, and they want to try to help out Paramount to go and acquire Warner Brothers. So meaning that if Warner Brothers decides to go and change their mind and they decide to go with Paramount, then that means that the WB is also going to be owned by Donald Trump because of Jared Kushner's connection, as well as the Saudis. So, yeah, you can imagine how going with Paramount has become a massively red flag. If it isn't already bad enough with the fact that Paramount is now owned by the Ellison family. But to go back into the initial deal, now, is that going to happen with Paramount? Only time will tell, because that thing is just breaking news. But let's go back into the situation right over here with Netflix, because so far it looks like it's officially going to be Netflix that will go and acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. And as I insinuated before, it's not just David Ellison that is upset that this deal is happening. However, the reason why David is upset about it is very unique. Why everyone else is upset about this deal, however, well, those are far more legitimate, and they do bring up some justified concerns. And of course, a lot of them are in regards to the well-being of employees and how this is really going to affect jobs. In fact, multiple unions and guilds, including the Producers Guild, the Directors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, Animation Guild, and many more, they stepped in to go and address their concerns. And they even stated, and not to mention the Writers Guild, since I believe they were among the first to go and address their problems with this, like they already were completely vocal saying that this feels like a massive red flag, and they are seriously worried about how this is going to affect the people, how this is going to affect jobs, how it's going to affect working conditions, how it's going to affect diversity and representation, how it's going to affect a lot of these. Give me a sec. Hold on. Excuse me. Even this entire deal has me choked up about all this. Nah, but in all seriousness, though, a lot of people have those issues and concerns, because what we are talking about is indeed a merger. And with these mergers, of course, when they do happen, that is going to spell a lot of trouble, and we're going to see a lot of job losses. In fact, when Skydance would go and own Paramount, they already let go of literally thousands of jobs across the board, including some high-profile ones, like Ramsey Nato had to go and step down. I believe that's the name. You could go and correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, like, in the case right over here, so of course you would definitely go and expect that this would even go and occur as well. If Netflix and Warner Brothers would merge, then of course Netflix is going to be dropping a lot of layoffs and thousands of layoffs with assets that they don't necessarily need with Warner Brothers. Like, they will go and completely reduce it. But then, at the same time, there was also some concerns of how it's going to affect the general public. Like, yes, this is going to have grave consequences upon Hollywood, but how is this going to affect consumers? How is it going to affect casual moviegoers? How is it going to affect the general public? Like, first and foremost, one thing I just want to go and get this out of the way. I know there are some people that have addressed some serious concerns about how this is going to affect physical media. Since with Netflix, as you know, they are pretty much against it and extremely reluctant if they would go and release any movie on DVD or Blu-ray or have some kind of special edition. Like, it is hard for them to even go and bring out something that would go either to Criterion or Shout Factory, or even if another studio want the movie they made to be released on Blu-ray. Like, let's just say we're very lucky that we even got Mitchell's versus the Machines and Vivo on Blu-ray and DVD, because you can imagine with the major success right now with K-pop Demon Hunters, some people think that it's going to be obvious that they would do so, but honestly, Netflix would feel like it would be a detriment to their streaming business if they would go and release K-pop Demon Hunters separately and have them given a physical media release. So in that regards, honestly, I really don't know. I think that's going to be a factor where we will ultimately have to wait and see if they want to keep that aspect separate from their own Netflix business. I think, honestly, this is something that you got to go and ask the Warner Archives, or if there is one person who would have more answers of how this would go and be heavily impacted in terms of physical media, it would be Jerry Beck, since he is a very key he's like a big player in terms of having many classic cartoons be released on Blu-ray and DVD, especially collaborating with the Warner Archives to have us, to give us like all these Looney Tunes collections and Tom and Jerry and Tex Avery and Hanna-Barbera and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, this is a case where maybe it's best to ask Jerry than to ask a simple animation fan than me. But then there is the factor of streaming. And a lot of people have wondered that now that Netflix is getting Warner Brothers Discovery, what does that mean for HBO Max? Some people are even wondering, are we inevitably going to go and see a merger between the two? Are we going to see all the HBO Max stuff be completely consumed by Netflix? Because even here in Canada, we're wondering if all the HBO Max stuff is going to be... Oh, excuse me. I don't know why I feel like oddly gassy today. But anyways, as I was saying, we don't know if in Canada, all the stuff that we get on our version of HBO Max called Crave, if that's going to be going away and then it'll just be implemented to Netflix. Or especially, are we going to see some price increases as well? Is that all going to happen? Well, I'll just say in that regards, we don't know. We don't necessarily have any of the answers. And for now, what they are saying is that they're just going to keep the two entities completely separate. Like, they're just going to keep HBO Max as its own thing, and they're going to go and keep Netflix as its own thing. Maybe we will know more answers when the time comes when Netflix does actually acquire Warner Brothers, and maybe we'll see if this does actually occur. But honestly, we'll just wait and see. For now, they're not going to do anything, but if they will do something, then we'll definitely hear about it. But then there is debatably the biggest concern of them all, and that is movie theaters. Because the big thing from all this is that Warner Brothers is about to be owned by not just another major Hollywood studio, but by a streaming company, by Netflix. And we know how Netflix is pretty anti-movie theater. Like, much like with physical media, they're very reluctant in terms of releasing their films onto the big screen. Like, if they do so, then it would mean that it's like a major big deal. Kind of like with the Guillermo del Toro films like Frankenstein or Pinocchio. Or if there's a movie that got massively successful like K-pop Demon Hunters, then they'll just go and give it like a weekend screening, and literally that's it. So some people might wonder, or they're worried that maybe in the future we'll see less movies on the big screen because those Warner Brothers movies are just going to be moving on to Netflix. And in that regard, it looks like Netflix is saying that for now, they're going to keep the Warner Brothers movies in theaters. Like, what's planned to be released on the big screen, they will go and put it out on the big screen. So they're not going to go and try to change that immediately. However, they did state that they are considering the idea of maybe they will go and shorten the window of exclusivity, where when a Warner Brothers movie will be released on the big screen, what Netflix might want to do is that they just want to go and wait like maybe a month or maybe like 45 days or something, and then they'll immediately go and release the film onto streaming. Because the sooner that it comes on Netflix, the better it would be for that particular company. So that could be a possibility of that potentially happening. So from there, because of all the worries, because of all the concerns, and because of the fear of how this is going to affect people's jobs, how it's going to affect the industry, and how this is going to affect our culture in general, there are a lot of people out there who are demanding for this deal to not even happen. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to say an extremely hot take. And I know not many people are going to be upset with me for saying this, but honestly, I understand why people don't want this to happen, but I think it's for the best that we just let this deal happen. Let Netflix acquire Warner Brothers, because the reality is that, yes, it's not great that this is even happening in the first place. But you got to keep in mind that this is probably the least damaging outcome we could have gotten, at least compared to the other options like Comcast and especially Paramount. And one thing you also got to go and keep in mind is that we are under the Trump administration. And because we are under the Trump administration, that is why if this deal doesn't happen, then that's a second chance where an even worse situation would go and occur. Because the big reason why this is even happening in the first place is not because Netflix wants to go and buy Warner Brothers. It's mainly because Warner Brothers wants to go and sell. I mean, it's kind of like with the whole Disney-Fox merger. Like, I know everybody is mad at Disney for buying Fox, but you don't see those same people being mad at Rupert Murdoch for wanting to sell in the first place. Considering that if Disney never bought Fox, then the company would have just gone into the hands of Comcast, because they were also interested in getting that company as well. And it's the same case here. Warner Brothers' big goal is that they want to go and sell, regardless if it is either Netflix or Paramount or Comcast or any other company out there. They want to get their billions of dollars so that they could go and hand the entire thing onto another major corporation. And the thing is that let's say there is a scenario where, okay, you manage to succeed in making this merger fail. Netflix doesn't go and buy Warner Brothers. Then that is a second chance for another company like Paramount to go and acquire it. And that's an even worse situation because, well, as we have seen here, that means you would give Warner Brothers to not just Paramount, but you're giving it to the Trump administration because of how some of the money is from Jared Kushner's affiliation, and also to the Middle East, to give it to the Saudi Arabians, to Qatar, to Abu Dhabi, and to those countries as well. And that is a much worse outcome. I could go and tell you that. And the sad reality is that no, there is no alternate reality. There is no outcome where Warner Brothers would end up not selling itself to any other company, because we are in an age where these major corporations will not care of what the general public will believe, and they will go and take advantage of any situations so that they can go and actually make the most out of making literally the most profit that they can, like literally making like billions, if not trillions of dollars for themselves. So that's unfortunately the reality that we live in. So factoring in the Trump aspect, the Middle East aspect, and the Paramount aspect with the Ellisons, again, I know many people will be mad at me for saying this, but the reality is that we ended up with possibly the least damaging outcome with having Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery. So, yeah, sorry to say this, folks, but no, there is no option where Warner Brothers doesn't sell to anyone. That's the unfortunate reality. So, might as well be in the hands of Netflix than to a much worse entity like Paramount. So let's not go and give Paramount that second chance to actually go and acquire it. So overall, there's honestly one more thing that I do want to go and discuss, and I might end up taking a break and then resuming onto my point. Actually, you know what? Let's actually go and do that. Let's go and actually take a break. Let's take everything to set in, and then I will go and make my final point, and then I will go and ask you all, what do you think about this entire thing? So let's take a break, and then we'll be right back, and then I will go and give you my final major thoughts on this. All right, welcome back. Now, there is one more thing that I want to go and discuss about all this, because yes, it is very frightening to see all this happening and thinking about what are the possible implications, even if nothing is set in stone just yet, even if it's not official right now that Netflix has acquired Warner Brothers. Because again, the only thing that really did happen is that Netflix announced that they are going to acquire Warner Brothers because they agreed on a major deal. But with all that said, let's say that there is a scenario where it does happen. Let's say that Netflix does officially acquire Warner Brothers. What would be the next step from there? What would be the next thing to go and ultimately happen if that does occur? Well, in that regards, for me, I feel like it would ultimately be a big wait and see. Because this is something that I've stated on social media, and I want to go and give Netflix 3 to 5 years to see how things are going to go with the company. Oh no. Son of a fish. Can you hold on a sec, folks? Man. Why now? Why not during... Man, why not sneeze during the break, man? Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. But anyways, back to what I was saying. I want to go and give Netflix 3 to 5 years after they fully acquire Warner Brothers to see how they are going to go. Because the thing is, if you know your recent history with Warner Brothers, they're kind of like the cursed relic of major corporations. Because those who do own it end up with such a horrible curse where the companies that do have them end up so terribly that they end up selling it away. It's kind of like the story with the monkey's paw, or like any of those stories that you hear that involves like a cursed idol or something like that, where it requires them to just relinquish the ownership of it in order for the curse to just be lifted and for their businesses to do much better. Because we have seen this with AOL, we have seen this with AT&T, and we have just recently seen this with Discovery. And with all three of these companies, things have gotten so terrible to the point that we would see this cycle happen again and again and again, where they just have to keep selling and selling and selling Warner Brothers like all day, every day, where they would mostly spend their time trying to pay their debt, and they would go and try to do things where they would, what was it? What's that term again? Where they would keep biting off more than what they could chew. They would keep losing profits one after another, even when they would do things that would end up becoming very popular, like rather it be stuff that would come out like on their TV networks like Cartoon Network, or put out successful films. Again, like this year, Warner Brothers had a lot of big hits. Like they had the Minecraft movie, they had Sinners, they had Weapons, like they had several like box office winners, but they were clearly not enough to go and salvage Warner Brothers business. So in that regards, that's why I want to go and wait 3 to 5 years to see how Netflix will go and do, and to see if they can actually prove if they are actually different than any of those companies that I've mentioned, like AOL, AT&T, and Discovery. Because I'll say now, maybe there is a likelihood that they could pull things through. maybe they could be better. Maybe they are different than them, and they're able to go and actually turn Warner Brothers into a benefit for their business in order to make Netflix bigger and even better. There is that chance. However, if they fail to do so, and let's say that if by 2030, if they fail to prove that they are different, and if they fall into those same mistakes that AT&T, AOL, and Discovery has done throughout the years, then we may see even more catastrophic consequences that will happen in the entertainment industry, especially with the possible downfall of Netflix itself. And if Netflix will suffer a massive downfall, then that could also mean that we will see the end of streaming as we know it. Now, I know that it is a major prediction that I am making, and I'm not saying that streaming is going to end altogether. That's not what I am saying at all. I'm saying that things are going to be massively different compared to what they used to be. But what I am saying is that if it fails, then yeah, we're going to see some major changes occur. So that's honestly what I wanted to go and say, that if this deal does happen, then let's wait 3 to 5 years, maybe up to 2030, and we'll see if Netflix can actually prove to be more different than Warner Brothers, or if they're going to be suffering so badly that we're going to see the downfall of that streaming platform, and maybe we will see a completely new chapter to streaming altogether. So it's all a big wait and see. I know, like, the future is scary at this point because of this deal, but I don't know, man. We'll just wait and see how it goes. This is a major thing, and even for someone like me, the best that I could do is just make guesses and predictions. So, like, even like take what I say with a grain of salt, but yeah, like, I understand the freakiness of this entire situation. So with that said, now I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I want to go and ask you all, what do you all think about Netflix possibly acquiring Warner Brothers? Let me know what you think, because I know that's a lot to go and register right there. Let's see now. I'm really not looking forward to this. Netflix buying Warner Brothers is not a good thing, and I can imagine that they are going to be massive consequences. Rather it be with the potential job losses or movies in theaters, it's pretty much no different than all these other company mergers. It really is kind of making the Disney-Fox merger look tame in comparison. Not to mention the past history with WB mergers, although as it is tradition for MAGA, they're throwing a temper tantrum for not getting what they want. Oh, you mean with Paramount, of course. Yeah, no surprise there. Let's see now. Netflix and Paramount are fighting over the poison chalice that is Warner Brothers. The studio has destroyed, or at the very least decimated, every company it ever merged with. So there really is no winner. Whomever wins would be crushed billions of debt that they'll never be able to pay off. At least Disney was able to pay for Fox with their theme parks, Marvel, Star Wars, and Frozen money. Paramount just has SpongeBob revenue, and Netflix just has subscriber cash. Either way, there is no winner. Exactly, man. And that's honestly why there's been a lot of doubt if Netflix could be the one to go and do so. I mean, maybe there is honestly no other company who could do so, and whoever does end up with Warner Brothers is going to be doomed anyways. But considering that it would be Netflix that's most likely to go and get it, the consequences are going to be absolutely massive, because I can imagine that if they do end up with Warner Brothers, there's going to be a point in the future where it's going to affect them so badly where they would have to relinquish their position as the king of streaming. So yeah, it's, the consequences, it's like, they're so big that it's hard to really imagine how it's going to really change things, but it's easy to imagine that they're like even the craziest of scenarios has a percentage that it could actually happen. Let's see. Let me tell you, the Netflix WBD deal is not good news for animation. The animation industry is still not in good shape, and now that acquisitions are happening, there will be fewer projects and jobs for entry-level positions, internships, and immigrants from animation studios. As an artist wanting to work in animation, my industry friends told me to focus on Canada in the meantime due to the work visa situation in the USA, including H-1B visas fees. Do see Animation Guild post on Instagram. Interesting. All right. Let's see. Between a streaming company that's trying to kill cinemas and a desperate conservative Nepo baby, I feel like this buyout of Warner Brothers is a disaster waiting to happen. Once Pandora's box opens, or Zaslav's box opens in this case, Netflix or Paramount will drown in Warner's billions of dollars in debt. Jobs will be lost and consumers will suffer in less options and even higher prices. Whoever wins, we lose. Now, one thing I will say, however, is that I believe in terms of the deal, rather it be with either Netflix, Comcast, or Paramount, I think part of the deal is to go and pay for the rest of Warner Brothers' debt. Like whoever does own it, like you could correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe is that those who do end up with Warner Brothers, they will already go and pay the debt. So I don't know if that debt issue is going to be that big of a deal. And it does explain a lot to why the price that either Netflix or Paramount has offered is like stupidly big. Because last I checked, Warner Brothers' debt is right now over $33 billion. So yeah, you could imagine that rather it be the $82.7 billion or the $108 billion that Paramount offered, that like some of that money will be going towards that debt. Let's see if there's any other comments. I will say the deal is very wild and chaotic. While I highly agree that shorter time in theaters and less on physical media sounds like a bad move, I will have to side with you that you gotta at least go with the lesser of two evils. I really do hope WB didn't change their minds and go with Paramount given the shady money they got. The Ellisons really now acted like Veruca Salt that they want WB now. Oh yeah, for sure. Let's see now. I'll read one more comment, or one or two maybe. I don't know if I read this one. So let's see. When I first heard that Netflix was going to buy Warner Brothers, I was genuinely shocked at this, especially since at first Netflix was hesitant before deciding to join in. And then they ended up winning the bid. Either way, it's definitely concerning for both streaming and movie theaters. But still, I'd rather have Netflix acquire WB rather than having Paramount buy it. Personally, I'm not going to immediately put my judgment on all of this since I'm going to wait to see how this goes. All right, that's fair. Not to take the position lightly, but at least this is better than being within Paramount, not only because the cross content, but for the other reasons. But that's not to say this is to consider this being a good thing, since Netflix does seem like the possibility for extendable content, let alone leading to higher revenue for their content. Sure, we don't know what's happening right away, but let's face it, we can only guess what they could be doing together now that the deal is finalized and hope for the best. Exactly. This is pretty much a position where, yeah, it sucks to get hit by a car, but you know what? It's better than getting hit by a truck or a train. At least there is that. But either way, like as many of you have pointed out, whoever wins in this case, yeah, we lose.